Last week, we talked about the law of love, which I really enjoyed. By the way, my sweet, lovely wife, sparkly wife today, came through her surgery okay this week, and she's walking, albeit gingerly. You say, Pastor Dan, you talked last week about how you were going to be a great nurse, and that you're going to try to last more than 48 hours of being a nice, sweet, loving nurse. Did you last more than 48 hours? No. But I did a good 48 hours. No, she's doing great, but thank you for your prayers, your texts, your calls, all the stuff. She was pretty much completely out of it for at least the first 48 hours, which made it easier to take care of her. But once she could talk, something about that, we appreciate all of the love and people wanting to stop by and, balloons and get well and all of that. Thank you so much. I know Robin appreciates it, yeah? Do I get at least a B for the care part of it? Okay. If you could see her face right now, you would not think that I got a good grade. It's not a good grade. The title of this message is Order, Disorder, and Reorder are 3 keys to spiritual growth. And this is a cycle that no matter where you are on your faith journey, I did want to say one more thing, my ADD brain. That is this. I want to say, Rachel, thank you so much for your help around here. We don't do a volunteer of the month, but if we had one, it would be you. And then the other 11 months, it would be Roland, but I don't want to tell him that. But thank you so much for your help. Rachel's been coming and helping us. She's like, you know what I would like to do for August and September, the hottest months in Florida? I would like to clean out the sheds and the connexes and the closets and all the stuff. So thank you so much. It's amazing, all the work you've done. So we appreciate you. So really, we really, really do. This cycle, first of all, these 3 ideas are, I want to give credit where credit's due. Richard Rohr has written about them pretty extensively in a book called The Wisdom Pattern. And they are something that, actually this week I taught a modified version of this to our Harvest House clients in the Freedom Program. I taught them kind of a different version. This is gonna be one that's more geared towards us in this room. Theirs, we geared a little bit more towards their recovery journey. But this concept Richard's written about, and I wanted to kind of take it and bring it to us in a way that hopefully will make sense. But I have been returning back to this idea for a while myself because it helps me in a lot of the different journeys and cycles that we go through in life. And so hopefully it'll help you. And it really is based on a lot of stories in the scriptures. You see it in Abraham, you see it in Moses, you see it, of course, in the life of Jesus. You see these 3 phases, these 3 things that happen. You see it in the life of Mary Magdalene. It's just all over the place. You see it in Lazarus. But we really can get a good idea of it in John 12:24, where it says this. It says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." So this seed is living. It represents order. It falls to the ground and dies, representing disorder. And then, of course, if it dies, and it can bear fruit, which is this kind of new order or this reorder. And this cycle we also see in the life of Christ. And so I'm going to make this kind of make more practical sense, hopefully, for us here. But if we look at the Bible, the scriptures in context and read them through time, there's Bibles you can buy that actually are according to chronology and not according to just the way that we've arranged them. But if you read that, you're going to kind of notice that there's some differences between the stuff we read earlier versus later. They clearly kind of show an evolution of human capacity, of comprehension, and depth of experience. Like we see it with Jesus. For me, he represents the mature image of what God is doing in history. If you look at Israel's growth as a people, we see the pattern of what happens to every individual in Israel alone, and to every community that sets out on a journey of faith. Israel's kind of the womb of incarnation when we read the story of the history of the nation. And their history, this whole this whole process, this whole drama, for those of you that like drama, is kind of set in motion. So it seems quite clear as we see all these examples that this is a pretty repeatable pattern of things, whether it's in people groups or individuals or faith journeys or nations that we see. And this pattern, it connects all of us. All of us have experienced or are experiencing some level of these things through life. And relationships sometimes have this. Most of the time they have this phase, these three phases. Journeys of faith, of course, careers. And so the first one we'll start with is this idea of order. And order is everything is basically good. Order is those moments in your childhood that you remember back to where you're like, hey, for the most part, yeah, things could have been better, but basically there was a moment where I felt safe. And for some of you, maybe you never felt safe. But think back to a moment in your life, and for most of us we have that. I don't want to say all, but for most of us we have a moment where we think, or a time period where we think, I was safe, I didn't have to worry about anything. Everything for the most part was taken care of. It was good. It's our first naivety. It's that kind of, well, in the process of a birth, it's finding out you're pregnant, right? It's like, I'm so excited, we're pregnant. You haven't gotten to the chaos of birthing yet, but it's this first growth, if you will, the beginning of anything. And we might call it puppy love when you fall in love. You know, it's that part of any pattern in our life. And so we begin almost this phase, this part of the cycle with kind of a tribal thinking, like mirroring our individual journeys. It's this egocentric need for order and self. It's something that we eventually move out of, some of us later than others. I'll never forget that when I got married very young to the mother of my children, and I apparently left a lot of stuff behind at my mother's house, and about 2 years later, she had had enough, and she packed all of it up, and she brought it to my ex at the time, and gave it to her and said, he's your problem now. But eventually, it was like, you know, move him out. Like, it's time. You are an adult. You own your own home at that point. Here, take your stuff and go, right? Like, mom and dad love you, but like the fire truck you made out of wood by hand that's not very attractive in shop class in high school, we don't need here anymore. Just put it in a bin and take it to your house if you want it. Your baseball card collection, well, we won't go there. That's a whole other story. Half of which was stolen. Told you it was another story. Take it with you. Like, get it out of here. But we'll put it this way. Those who try to stay here in this kind of first satisfying explanation of how things should be tend to refuse and avoid any confusion, conflict, inconsistencies, or suffering. And some people hold on to this phase of their life at all costs. Now, please, what I'm getting ready to say, I promise you, is not political, truly. Some people are wired to be more conservative. And sometimes they end up being conservative politically, but they're just conservative. They're not risk takers. They like to know where everything is. They're gonna wear belt and suspenders. That kind of mentality. They just want to make sure that they don't want any surprises. They want to plan everything out to the nth degree. Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it. Which, politically, you're not. But in life, you're very conservative. So this tends to be the place where people that have that kind of framework stay stuck here, or they try to get back here. So when you hear people say, I just wish things were like the good old days, I want to go back to this time, they're trying to get back to that order. They're trying to get back to something that I promise you, you can never get back to. It will never be 1950 again. It will never be 1970 again. Gas will never be 50 cents again, a gallon. It's not. You're not going to go to the corner store and for a nickel get a pop or a Coke or whatever. You're just not. Out of the fountain. It's not. We're not going back, but a lot of times people think if I could just only have the feelings around what I felt during this period of my life where everything just seemed okay, then life will be okay. And so we will fight to get back there, which leaves us stuck because growth happens only when we get to phase 3, which we'll get to in a moment. And so if you're kind of wired that way, understand you're probably getting stuck in the order phase and you're trying to get something back that you'll never have again. Because as we know it, as adults, life is never just butterflies and roses. It isn't. Things aren't, there's no such thing as just everything is light and bright and we never experience any dark moments or any chaos. It's just not. And so this order phase eventually for most of our lives gets blown up. And sometimes it gets blown up over and over and over again. We find order in a relationship and then it gets blown up somehow. It doesn't mean the relationship ends, but you go, oh man, this isn't what I expected, or, oh, he's gained 100 pounds in the last year, or whatever, or, oh, I mean, whatever it is, or this job I was so excited about, now I'm like, my boss is a total jerk. Right? Like, it's called an example. And so disorder, at some point in our lives, we will be deeply disappointed by what we were originally taught, by where our choices have led us, or by the seemingly random tragedies that take place in all of our lives. So could be death of a loved one, it could be disease, it could be just any disruption to our normal way of thinking. And the two ways here that we get stuck in this spot is we say, I want to go back. Take me back to that time where I felt safe. Take me back to that moment where everything was okay. I just want to go back. I want to go back. If we could only have what we had back then, if I could only have that other job where it was totally different, if I could only, be back in that spot where I didn't have to worry about paying the bills, I didn't have to worry about the cost of things going up or whatever it is, just take me back there. And we get stuck in disorder because you can't go back. There is no back. That's done. That's gone. That's over with. You're now in this phase, and the only way forward is forward. Seems silly. The only way to get out of this phase is to go into reorder, which I'll get to in a moment. You can't go back, and you can dream of going back, but it's not going to happen. And the other way people get stuck here, and if you are more of a progressive person, a person that likes to challenge everything, a person that's a risk taker, a person that's like, I don't care, I don't need a plan, I'm just gonna go out there and let her rip. Okay? And we work together. And I always think everything's great. Guess who doesn't always think everything's great? Right? What can happen in this phase for people that are wired that way is they can become cynical, angry, volatile, screw this. They become conspiracy theorists, usually, this personality, come up with all sorts of ideas. They don't believe that there is a common human thread or decency. They usually will isolate. They're just like, it's me against the world. They become so disillusioned. They're perfectly fine with knowing I'm never going to have that, but they come to this point where like, I guess this is all life is, and I'm mad about it. And that's the two ways we can get stuck in disorder. And sometimes you're going to have a hybrid of both of them. But eventually, we slowly recognize the invitation to a face-to-face love affair with this biblical thread, this dialogue of election, failure, sin, and grace, which matures our soul. This is kind of where we do need to read or have people around us that we draw wisdom and experience from. It's where we do need some input in our lives. It's where we do need, this is usually the only phase in most of our lives where we just desperately need an outside perspective, someone to bounce something off of, like, I'm really stuck. How do I get beyond this? And some people, I'm not going to say that. We'll see this in the story of Adam and Eve. We see this bliss of the Garden of Eden. That's order. Then we have this moment with the serpent that we have this great fall. That's the disorder. And then after that, really is when their life begins. Up to that moment, it was kind of like the precursor to the rest of their lives. And we can see this disorder in most of our lives in some capacity. Probably the greatest moment of disorder for me was a marriage that went goodbye. COVID stuff, all kind of happening at the same time. Stuff happening with adjusting what things look like here. There's all this stuff that happens, having my own kind of crisis of faith in a beautiful way, but in the middle of it, it felt like, well, what do I even believe anymore? For you, you might label it deconstruction, but things usually get worse before they get better. It's like building muscle. You have to tear it down in order to build it up. It's like there's this moment where we're like, should I have ever taken this step? Should I ever begin to question these things in my life? Because I feel out of control, and I feel like the ship is going down. Should I ever have made this choice or decision? And you feel it in this moment, and it's a fire that burns inside of us, and we feel it, and we start questioning, we start second guessing, and we start going, maybe I made a mistake. I shouldn't have left that church. I shouldn't have made that decision. I shouldn't have, begun to say those things out of my mouth. I'll never forget that when we had a big kind of thing that happened here within our own kind of family, and about 2 years ago, and the following Sunday, we had like 20 people. And I remember walking in there, ready to deliver my message. It was in the other building. It was a couple months before we moved in here, and I was thinking to myself, I really messed this up. Look, if this was ordained by God, if this was my journey, if I'm following the path that God's laid out for me as a leader of this church, what's happened? And it'll mess with your mind. It'll rock your world. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be your career. It can be a diagnosis. It can be a relationship thing. Whatever it is, but we just find ourselves going, what the heck? What is going on? And like I said, our tendency either is to become angry and cynical, or our tendency is to go, I just got to go back. I have to undo whatever I did to get me here, but there's no undoing it. There isn't. And then there's this other thing that gets us to a point where we realize that these things can coexist with each other. Where sometimes it's intimacy, and sometimes it's loss. Sometimes it's marriage, sometimes it's divorce, sometimes it's stability, sometimes it's instability, sometimes it's connectedness, sometimes it's isolation, sometimes it's groundedness, sometimes it's adriftness. I don't even know if that's a word, but it sounded good. Sometimes it's, I know this for sure, and then all of a sudden the same thing, we're like, well, what if I'm wrong? Sometimes it's schooling, and then it's post-graduation. What am I going to do in this world? Sometimes it's employment, and then it's unemployment. Sometimes it's I'm safe, and then all of a sudden I don't feel safe. All of these are signs that we have not made a major error in our life, or God's hand is off of our shoulders. You've got to hear me. It's not that God is angry or mad or that God's left us. It's part of the cycle. Jesus said, my God, Father, hey, I'm your son. Why have you forsaken me? That was probably the pinnacle of disorder for that story. One moment it's, rehearsing the prophecies of Isaiah and Jeremiah in the temple, and the next moment is, have you forsaken me? Where are you? And the terrible thing, and I put this in there just for you, Dara, is that there is no nonstop flight to reorder. There's no skipping the disorder part. Disorder is actually a sign that you're one step closer to actually growing. Disorder is a sign you're headed in the right direction, not the wrong direction. Questioning everything is a sign that you're probably on the precipice of learning something new. Disorder is a sign that there's an innovation coming in your life. Disorder is a sign that creativity is getting ready to come. The most creative people find themselves creating some of the most beautiful things through the most pain, through the most chaos. I'm gonna get us to the last one here. We have to be very careful because we, for many years, we've judged things, especially in the evangelical world, we've judged things according to their fruit. But fruit is a process. When the seed dies and the shell is discarded in the ground, if in that moment we judged that death or that process by its fruit, this should be clicking for some of us in this room. If we judged the fruit of that moment, we would say, this has come to nothing. I've gone through it personally. Many of you have gone through it. How's life working for you? One of my best friends in the world, who's also in ministry, texted me when I was going through the death phase, the reorder or the disorder phase, and said to me, and words are powerful, it haunted my head, it haunted my mind. I don't even think to this day he realizes it. But he said, if you don't stop what you're doing, I'm paraphrasing it. I probably still have it in text message, but I'm paraphrasing it. I'm afraid you're going to end up a washed up, broke pastor living in a one-bedroom efficiency in a bad part of town with nothing to your name and nobody who wants to be in your life. That's somebody that was judging the fruit before the seed even had a moment to come up through the ground. Not understanding that this is a process, that our lives are a process, that relationship is a process, that everything goes through a process, and if judged in a moment, if judged by any of our worst moments of disorder, we'd be in trouble. But then there's the resurrection part. There's the reorder part. There's the part where all of a sudden disorder starts to make sense, where we leave the idea of going back to order, where we realize that only in this final stage can both light and darkness coexist. And I was told my entire life that, well, the Bible says that light dispels darkness, or that darkness can't coexist with light. And then you encounter the world and you realize, well, there's light over here and there's dark over here and there's light over here and there's dark over here. And so that doesn't seem to make sense. And the reality is that true maturity, whether spiritually or emotionally or in our minds or in our process of life, true maturity is a sign that when good things come, hooray, and when bad things come, I'm gonna be okay. It doesn't take me out. It doesn't send me into a tailspin, a destructive thing in my life. It doesn't make me lash out at the world around me. It literally, I've learned to coexist. I've learned that in moments that feel like everything is going to fall apart, that I still believe that God has me, that I can trust my Creator with my life, that everything in my life and every moment in my life where I thought this is the end, or I'll never recover from this. Any of us in this room that have ever experienced that, we did recover, and it wasn't the end, and everything did end up being okay, and we were able to get through it. That's actually real maturity. And you don't even have to believe God is even a thing. But this process, this idea is extremely beneficial for every single one of us, that we would have some sort of, faith. Because the truth is that darkness and mistakes and trials are supreme teachers. Success teaches you nothing. It just feels good. I mean, we strive for it, we crave it, we want to get that feeling again, but it's the dark, it's the big whoopsies, it's the huge failures, it's the embarrassment, it's the Corey not singing that song on time. Because when he sings Deep Cries Out the next time, he's going to be so on time, I promise you. But if he sang that song perfect this morning, he wouldn't listen to it and rehearse it ever again. We only learn things through mistakes. We only learn things when I have gotten up here many a Sunday and got done and went, well, that was a flop. Then you go, well, how could I do this better? It's failure. It is a huge moments where we feel down that teach us something, makes us dig in, that makes us go, you know what? I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care what anyone's opinion is. I'm going to figure something out here. I'm going to get creative. I'm going to expand, what I'm used to just being in a little box where I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to really learn something here. That's what it is. And I love this because it does require something that we do call faith, and faith can look a lot of different ways for you. But it's this. Faith is that patience with mystery. I love this definition of faith. Faith is being patient with the things that we don't quite know yet. Patient with ourselves, patient with God, patient with one another. It requires faith. It requires faith to be patient. And as it says here, it allows us to negotiate the stages of life and move toward that kind of love that is not just based on ourselves. Death is usually always a part of life, and failure is always a part of the journey to victory. And I'm not Tony Robbins up here. We're not going to walk on coals at the end of this. It's true. We will fail. And sometimes it won't be our fault, and sometimes it will, and it doesn't matter. We will feel like stuff is getting out of control. We will feel chaos. And those moments aren't always meant to correct us. Sometimes those moments are just a part of the process to getting us to a place where we can learn something. I've learned more about God in the last 5 years, which have also marked at least the majority of the beginning of those 5 or 6 years, the most difficult part of my life. I've learned more about God in let's say 6-year period than I have in the rest of my entire life, than in the 37 years prior to that. Sat in church my whole life, listened to great, smart people teach the book. Been around things my entire life, but it was only when I found myself going, okay, something has gone awry. Oh, I don't think I'm going to be able to put this one all back together. There's a death happening here. Something is coming to an end, and I can't control it. It's funny because I've learned more about God in 6 years, but I've also lost more friends in 6 years than I have in the rest of my entire life, probably 10 times over. Because people want to judge a seed when the shell comes off. And they go, I don't want to be attached to this because this doesn't look like it's ever going to produce fruit. Well, yeah, sure, it doesn't look like it. In the moment, I'm putting my hands down. Debbie, I have my hands up like this. She says I look pregnant when I do that, so I'm not going to do that anymore. Oh, you think you could just say that to me and that's not going to come out publicly? No, I don't even, it's not even comparable, okay? No. I have a very special round belly. It's very, very special. It's hard work. I do it at the table. Sometimes I stand up and exercise it just straight from the fridge, but it's hard work. We feel like when there's great loss that there's something wrong. And sometimes when there's great loss, there's actually something really right. I'm going to end with this. Yeah, end already, 11:17. You're welcome. I want to read this a couple. What? Who said what now? Let me see. That was you. No, you're covering your mouth. Was it Denise? All right, well, whatever. You know what? You know what, drummer girl? It wasn't Corey's fault. It was your fault for that song. Corey sang it right. You played it wrong. I want to end with this. Love is the source and goal. Faith is the slow process of getting there. And hope is the willingness to move forward without resolution and closure. And these are indeed, as we read in 1 Corinthians 13, the three things that last. People who have these gifts, faith, hope, and love, are indestructible. I love that quote. If we can learn that love is the source and the goal, it is the thing that moves us, and it's also the destination. That faith is that process of getting there when it feels like, what is going on? I very positively spun it as patience with mystery, but faith sometimes feels like chaos. Faith feels like, oh man, I'm losing stuff left and right. What is going on here? Faith sometimes feels like death. And then there's this hope, this willingness to move forward without knowing the resolution, without knowing or having closure, without knowing if it's going to work out. And if we can incorporate these three ideas and allow them to work together symbiotically in our life, we're indestructible. Nothing can take us down. People don't get taken out because people will get stuck in the disorder phase and they'll end their life in the disorder phase. And people will look at their lives and they'll say, oh, they just totally messed up their life. Look at the decisions they made. Look how they died. And we're missing the point. Usually the reason someone got stuck there is because they didn't understand that this is actually a part of the journey, but it's not the final place. They come to a place where they can't get back what they had, or they become so cynical and angry, they just stay there, never searching to move beyond it. But there is a beyond. There is a resurrection. There is an opportunity to learn and grow beyond it. Think about the hatred, even in our country alone, from all sides and all sorts of people. It's usually motivated by people refusing to be open to something beyond what they feel like they've always known or heard or believed. They're just stuck in chaos and disorder. And so that gets bled out to the rest of everything that's happened. We're living in a fair amount nationally of chaos and disorder. It's not reflective of a government. It's not reflective of some wild agenda of Satan. It's reflective of us as people. We are living in disorder. We are living in chaos as a nation, not realizing that if I will allow myself to be pushed beyond these moments of uncertainty into something, you ready for this? New, right? New. I don't know everything. New. That there's life on the other side of it. It's why religion can be the best thing or the worst thing. It's never in between. It's either harming people or it's helping people. There's no in between. We're either helping people realize that where they're at in life, no matter how much chaos there is, it's not a reflection of who they are or their identity or they're just this or that. It's just a part of the process. And Jesus went through it himself. That moment where it's like, my God, you've forsaken me. You left me. Where are you? Everything's gone. It's done. What do we do this for? But then that seed starts to grow, and I have gotten to see this process in real time with this church. And I mean this with no pun intended. You are the fruit. Some of you are oranges. Some of you are lemons. What would you be? What kind of fruit would you be? A dragon fruit. Scary on the outside, but pink on the inside.
Oh, that's sweet.
Wasn't that sweet?
Nice. That's almost nice. Yeah.
Borderline nice, right? Some of you are papayas. Right? All right, let's stand to our feet. If you want to, I kind of put my own spin on it. Like I said, Richard Ward wrote a lot about this. If you want to learn more about this, you can get that book. I think it's called The Wisdom Pattern. And there's a lot of stuff online. If you type in order, disorder, reorder, you're going to find a lot of different takes and perspectives on this idea. And there's also other names for it, but it is, man, it's so good for us to understand. Each and every one of us, none of us are exempt from it. It's just part of life. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you today, and I'm just grateful for this community of people. I'm grateful for all of the beautiful fruit, all of the beautiful things you've done from moments of disorder. I'm thankful and grateful today that each and every one of us can be reminded that no matter where we are in this process, that you've got us. We just need to hold on. We need to allow love to be the destination, the goal, and the source. Allow faith to get us through the moments of uncertainty, and allow hope to be the thing that we hold on to, realizing that things are going to get better. They always do. And for those of us that are finding ourselves in disorder in this moment today, in any capacity of our life, let this be a bold reminder that this is not the destination. This is just a layover. That eventually we board that plane and we head to where we're supposed to go, and we'll land there safely and experience something new in our lives. Thank you today. I ask that you continue to just bless and encourage and uplift and speak hope into the hearts of those that are here and those that are watching, those that will watch throughout the week or listen throughout the week. We thank you. In your name we pray. And everyone says, Amen. Love you guys. Appreciate you.